Hey, J.R. Romano here with the Connecticut Republican Party. Today, I want to talk a little bit of a press conference we had today announcing a resolution that the Republican Party of Connecticut will be adopting. This resolution is condemning the history of the Democratic Party and demanding a name change. We believe it is vital that every citizen understand the history of the so-called Party of Inclusion. If we're going to hold Christopher Columbus to a certain standard 500 years after the fact, we certainly have a moral obligation to look at the history and the atrocities perpetrated by the Democratic Party, violations of human rights, violations of just human decency, frankly. When you consider that as recently as 1977, Joe Biden was seeking support to work with segregationists, it's not surprising that he would make comments like, "You ain't black," in regards to African Americans that do not want to support his candidacy for president. He's also made comments like, "Poor kids are just as smart as white kids." It doesn't surprise me that Joe is a Democrat with that kind of mindset, considering when you go back and look at old political cartoons from the 1890s and 1920s, where, the comments like that remind me of this political cartoon, and I encourage all of you to look it up. It's called "Of Course He Wants to Vote Democrat Ticket." This is basically how the Democrats survived as a political party, through coercion, through violence, winning elections through fraud, through literally chasing elected officials, people who'd won elections, either murdering them or chasing them out of town. That's the legacy of the Democratic Party. That's how they maintained power in the South for more than 100 years, was through violation of human rights, through coercion, through corruption. And to sit here and say all of a sudden, they're all changed, when many of them are one step away, considering they've been in Congress as long as they have, or in the Senate as long as they have, one step away from that history. And all of a sudden, things have changed. Nothing has changed until they drop their name. And that's how many of us feel. It's laughable that they're tearing down monuments and not even addressing their own history outside of saying, "Yeah, sorry, we did it. Whoops." It's a joke. And when you look at the list of things the Democrats Party has done to our fellow citizens through more than 100 years, the justices of the Dred Scott decision, 12 Democrats formed the States of the Confederacy. Democrats blocked the 13th, 14th, well, I shouldn't say blocked, voted against the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. Democrats held the longest filibuster in Senate history to block the 1952 Civil Rights Act. Nathan Bedford Forrest was the founder of the KKK. He was a general in the Confederate Army and an elected Democrat. You have the Jim Crow laws, right? So Jim Crow was enacted because Republicans started winning elections in the South. And so what did the Democrats do? They codified their racism through local legislative bodies that they were stealing elections for and maintaining their party. If it wasn't for racism, if it wasn't for institutional racism, the Democratic Party would be dead. That is a fact. That is a fact. And the irony of them in the middle of the night and the wee hours of the morning taking down statues of Christopher Columbus and not addressing their own history is laughable. It's laughable. Even as recent, John F. Kennedy used FBI resources to spy on Martin Luther King. FDR created the Red Line laws that everyone talks about in terms of planning and zoning. Those are Democrat laws. It's insane. They must strip themselves of this name completely, because if you're going to talk about Woodrow Wilson, you should talk about the party that he belonged to, because it wasn't just one man. The entire party believed what Woodrow Wilson believed. They stood idle as he segregated the FBI. They stood idle, showing Birth of a Nation as putting a stain on White House history by Birth of a Nation being the first movie ever played in the White House. It is amazing to me. And for me, the Democratic Party has been stripping names off buildings, have been taking pictures off walls in government halls, yet they haven't addressed their atrocities on the whole. If you're going to kill the serpent, you need to strike at the head. And I'm so proud of the Republican Party here in Connecticut that we are going to be adopting this resolution at our next meeting. And I hope the Democrats finally own up to their unbelievably gross history, because they'd rather be talking about tweets versus the laws that have left people of color trapped in awful situation through redlining, through Jim Crow, all these things that we talk about how they've impacted people of color. And the Democrats want to talk about tweets. Right. I'm J.R. Romano. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe.